This is the Cornish fishing village of Porthleven at high tide this morning. A breathtaking battering that left buildings damaged and harbour defences breached. This was quite simply the worst storm they've had in these parts for something like 50 years.
Depressions bring wild weather to the UK, but have you ever wondered where they come from? To find out, we have to look at two main features of the atmosphere. The story starts way up at 30,000 feet where passenger planes cruise around the world, because that's where we find one of the two driving forces behind depressions. It's where the jet streams blow. Now, these winds rocket around the globe at speeds of 55 to 75 miles an hour quite generally, but 250 mile an hour speeds are possible in these incredibly powerful ribbons of air. There are four major jet streams, one near to each pole, called the polar jet streams, and two more near the equator. Let's zoom in towards the northern hemisphere polar jet. These jet streams snake around the globe, forced to turn back and forth by the spin of the Earth, and they roughly mark the boundary between the warm tropical air and the cold polar air. Now, as the jet turns left, creating a trough, the air spreads out at the top of the atmosphere and gets replaced by air sucked up from below. Now, this ascending air, which is marked here in the base of the trough by the pink area, is a key part of a depression. Depressions need more of a push than they get from jet streams alone. The second driving force behind the development of a depression can be found by looking at the density of the atmosphere. Dense cold air takes up less space than warm air, so when warm air moves from place to place, air is forced upwards. Obviously, it can't go downwards because the ground is in the way. Now, if we step back and view things from above, we see warm air moving across the map, and where it meets the cold air, it has to ascend. And that gives us the two forces we're looking for: the movement of warm air adding to the upwards forcing, and secondly, the sucking effect of that high-level jet stream. So when both of these things happen in the same place, we have strong ascent through the depth of the atmosphere in this highlighted area. The rising air spreads out in the upper atmosphere faster than it can come together at the ground, which means that we're effectively losing some air, leading to falling pressure. This is known as a development area, with surface pressure tending to drop, and a depression is born. The air spins around the depression anti-clockwise in the northern hemisphere, trying to reach the centre where it's being sucked upwards. And we still have our warm and cold areas too, and these will often make it obvious where the fronts will be, marking the boundaries between the colder and the warmer air. As the air starts to spin around the depression, these fronts move with the flow, and at this point the depression is known as a frontal wave. If the depression is developing quickly, those pressure lines, or isobars, will tighten and become close together. The closer the isobars are to each other, the stronger the winds will blow. And over the next few days, the depression will often become larger and slow-moving, with pressure in the centre rising again. Now, this is how the story generally goes for depressions around the UK. However, in reality, there's much more variation. Some depressions last for only a day or so, while others become large and maintain themselves for many, many days. Some stay anchored to one spot, while others rattle across the Atlantic Ocean and across Britain.
In Kent, the classic face of the countryside is scarred for many years. An English country road here looks more like a track through a logging camp. Millions of trees have been destroyed. The National Trust has launched a replanting fund, but says the natural beauty of the southeast may not return for centuries.
That was the result of the most famous depression to hit the UK back in October 1987. It was not a hurricane, but it was an extreme example of warm air rising to create falling pressure and a rapidly deepening depression. It ravaged southern England in particular before moving up towards the north and east of Scotland later in the day, as you can see on the chart there. Now, storms like that only happen perhaps once every 200 years, but forecasters are constantly watching for those development areas to make sure we're prepared when these monster storms decide to return.
Winds of 94 miles an hour hit the capital, leaving urban inhabitants dazed. In Whitehall, government phone lines were out of action and the stock exchange suspended dealings for most of the day. Banks were closed and computers failed as electricity blackouts covered much of the south. The damage it has caused here will be remembered for years to come.